What if I told you that some Ford engines never break? Engines that kept running without oil, outlived the very trucks wrapped around them, and hauled America's heaviest loads for 500,000 miles or more? These aren't factory slogans, they're real stories from owners, truckers, and mechanics. Today, we'll count down the most durable Ford engines ever built, and finally, we'll reveal the one engine crowned with the ultimate honor. Turn the key on a truck with a Ford 300 inline-6, and the first thing you notice isn't a roar, it's a steady thrum, low and confident, like an old farm machine promising another day's work. On paper, it looked modest, around 101 to 150 horsepower, depending on the year, with about 240 pound-feet of torque delivered right off idle. 0 to 60? Let's just say you had time to sip your coffee, often, 13 to 15 seconds in a pickup. But numbers never told the real story. What mattered was how it felt. That lazy climb in revs translated into unshakable pulling power. Hook up a trailer, load the bed with equipment, or crawl through muddy fields, and the 300 never complained. Owners joked that while other V8s roared past on the highway, the 300 just kept chugging, slow, steady, unstoppable. And unstoppable it truly was. Stories pile up of trucks running 200,000, 300,000, even 500,000 miles without a rebuild. One driver bottomed out the oil pan, lost every drop of oil, and still drove 15 kilometers home. After topping it off, the truck kept working for years. That's not just reliability, that's mechanical folklore. What the 300 lacked in urgency, it repaid with loyalty few engines could match. Its cast-iron block, pushrod simplicity, and under-stress design made it nearly unkillable. Farmers trusted it to power daily chores, contractors leaned on it for job sites, and families knew it would wake up with the sunrise year after year. It wasn't about quarter miles, it was about decades. While other engines earned headlines, the 300 quietly earned trust. Even today, when enthusiasts talk about bulletproof engines, this one tops the list. Because the Ford 300 inline-6 didn't just last a long time, it built a legacy that refuses to die. If the 300 inline-6 was the steady heartbeat of Ford's light-duty trucks, the 7.3 Power Stroke became the lungs of America's heavy haulers. Introduced in the mid-90s, it didn't dazzle with speed. In fact, a crew cab F250 with this engine lumbered from 0 to 60 in about 10 to 12 seconds. But behind the wheel, speed didn't matter. The feeling of unstoppable torque did. Rated at around 210 to 275 horsepower with a massive 425 to 525 pound-feet of torque, the 7.3 delivered a surge that made towing feel effortless. Owners quickly realized it wasn't just powerful, it was practically immortal. One man daily drives his 96 F250 with nearly 500,000 miles on original injectors and turbo. A business owner cycled through 10 different 7.3 powered trucks since 1995, selling each one only after odometers passed 250,000. And here's the kicker. Fleets often retired the trucks not because the engines failed, but because the interiors wore out first. When an engine outlasts the body around it, you know you've built a legend. That's the brilliance of the 7.3 Power Stroke. It wasn't about winning drag races, it was about winning trust. Hauling 15,000 pounds of livestock, climbing mountain passes, or idling for hours on a job site, this diesel never flinched. Its modest horsepower ratings fooled many, but real-world performance humbled even gas V8s. For families, it meant confidence on cross-country trips. For contractors, it meant their livelihood was safe. And for enthusiasts, it meant pride in owning a machine that could run 500,000 miles and still ask for more. If the 300 inline-6 proved that simple design could live forever, the 7.3 showed that diesel power could do the same, only bigger, stronger, and built to carry America on its back. The 7.3 earned its crown through endurance, but Ford knew the diesel story couldn't end there. After the troubled 6 and 6.4 left scars on the brand, the 6.7 Power Stroke arrived as redemption. Slide into an F250 or F350 with this engine, press the throttle, and you're met with something rare in a heavy-duty truck: surprising quickness. Despite weighing over 3 tons, these beasts hit 0 to 60 in about 7 to 8 seconds, thanks to a towering 440 to 475 pound-feet of torque. Owners quickly discovered it wasn't just strong, it was reliable. One driver with 130,000 miles called it the best vehicle he'd ever owned, even more trouble-free than his Toyota 4Runner. Another bragged about hauling 30,000 pounds like it was nothing, describing the truck as an absolute beast. The 6.7 didn't just silence doubters, it roared back with authority. That's why the 6.7 Power Stroke is remembered not only as powerful, but as proof Ford could learn from its mistakes. It blended raw muscle with refined manners, cruising smoothly on highways, sipping diesel with surprising efficiency, yet always ready to drag mountains if asked. For truck owners, it meant confidence. Confidence that the nightmare years of the 6 were gone, and that their heavy-duty workhorse wouldn't let them down. For Ford, it was more than an engine. It was a statement that they could reclaim their place atop the diesel world. If the 300 was folklore and the 7.3 was royalty, the 6.7 was redemption. A modern-day giant that reminded everyone the blue oval could still build a diesel worthy of the crown. Diesel engines carried Ford's heavy loads, but reliability wasn't just reserved for the big rigs. In the world of police cruisers, taxis, and family sedans, the 4.6 L2-valve Modular V8 became the unsung hero. On paper, it looked ordinary, 220 to 260 horsepower, and a 0 to 60 time of 8 to 9 seconds in a Crown Victoria. Hardly muscle car territory. But that's not what made it legendary. What made it legendary was how it endured. One Thunderbird owner racked up 322,000 miles on the original engine and transmission. Another F-150 owner passed 400,000 miles with no leaks, no smoke, and no drama. And for police fleets, these engines were pushed harder than almost any vehicle on the road. Long hours idling, sudden high-speed pursuits, and relentless stop-and-go city duty. Yet they kept firing up, shift after shift, year after year. That's why the 4.6 earned respect far beyond its numbers. Departments trusted it because failure wasn't an option. Families trusted it because they knew it would last longer than the car itself. Its secret was simple design, an overbuilt bottom end, straightforward maintenance, and the kind of durability that came from being tested in the toughest environments every single day. The 4.6 Modular didn't try to be glamorous, but it succeeded in being bulletproof. If the 6.7 Power Stroke restored faith in Ford's diesels, the 4.6 did the same for gas engines, quietly proving that endurance wasn't limited to torque monsters. It was a workhorse for America's streets, building its legacy not in horsepower headlines, but in hundreds of thousands of miles of dependable service. If the 4.6 Modular proved Ford could dominate police fleets and family cars, the Windsor 302 showed that reliability could live inside passion too. This small block V8 wasn't about brute numbers, it was about balance. In the late 80s Mustang GT, the 302 pushed out around 225 horsepower, hustling to 60 in just under 7 seconds. Quick enough to thrill, but not so high-strung that it burned itself out. That was the magic. Owners tell stories of running 200,000, even 300,000 miles without a major issue. One driver logged over 301,000 miles, replacing only the water pump and alternator. Another sold his Mustang after 200,000 miles, and the new owner still wanted the engine more than the car itself. The Windsor wasn't exotic, but it was eternal, equally at home in a muscle car, a pickup, or even a luxury Lincoln. That's what made the 302 Windsor so beloved. It was both fun and forever. For the everyday driver, it offered steady, dependable service. For the weekend racer, it was a playground, cheap to rebuild, endlessly modifiable, with parts so abundant you could practically build one from scratch. Its pushrod simplicity and cast iron strength gave it toughness, while its responsiveness kept it exciting. It didn't have the headline-grabbing stats of a big block, nor the refinement of modern Modular V8s, but it bridged practicality and performance in a way few engines ever have. If the 4.6 earned its reputation in uniforms and fleets, the 302 earned its stripes on drag strips and back roads, proving that Ford's definition of bulletproof wasn't just about surviving. Sometimes it was about thriving mile after mile, burnout after burnout. If the Windsor 302 proved a small block could be fun and forever, the Coyote 5 showed Ford could carry that spirit into the modern age. When it debuted in the 2011 Mustang GT, it shocked enthusiasts with over 400 horsepower straight from the factory. Suddenly, a Mustang could sprint to 60 in the mid-4-second range, revving past 7,000 RPM with the urgency of a European sports car. But what no one expected was how tough it would be. High-simple engines usually live fast and die young, but not this one. Owners tell stories of Coyotes living hard lives and still refusing to quit. One Mustang GT owner pushed his car nearly 300,000 miles, needing only a timing chain replacement. A truck owner with an F-150 simply called his 5 tough as nails, praising it after years of heavy hauling. The Coyote wasn't just a high-rev thrill machine, it was a revelation, proof that modern tech didn't have to sacrifice old-school toughness. That's what makes the Coyote so special. It delivers both the thrill and the trust. Step on the gas and it sings to redline, turning an ordinary commute into something worth remembering. Back off and it hums along quietly, ready to do it all again tomorrow and the next day for years. For enthusiasts, it means a modern Mustang that can be both a daily driver and a weekend warrior. For truck owners, it means V8 power that works hard without complaint. The Coyote blends old-school character with modern engineering, proving that Ford still knows how to build engines that aren't just fast, but bulletproof. If the Windsor was the foundation of Ford's V8 legacy, the Coyote became its proof of evolution, showing the world that performance and endurance can, in fact, live under the same hood. If the Coyote proved modern V8s could be both powerful and reliable, the 351 Cleveland reminds us that Ford cracked that code decades earlier. Born in the golden age of muscle cars, the Cleveland was designed for performance first. Big ports, big valves, and a reputation for high RPM breathing. In early 70s Mustang Mach 1S, it pushed 275 to 300 horsepower, launching the car to 60 in about 6 to 7 seconds. But raw speed wasn't its only trick. What surprised owners most was its toughness. One driver told of blasting down the highway with no radiator cap, then bottoming out the sump and losing every drop of oil yet still limping the car another 15 kilometers home. After topping up fluids, the Cleveland just kept running. That wasn't just durability, that was defiance. And that's why the Cleveland holds a special place in Ford history. It was a muscle engine built to thrill, but it also had the backbone to survive punishment most motors would never recover from. For enthusiasts, it meant Saturday nights at the drag strip without fear of blowing up. For daily drivers, it meant confidence that the same car could carry them to work Monday morning. Even decades later, the Cleveland's reputation remains intact not just as a performance powerhouse, but as a bulletproof survivor of one of the toughest eras in automotive history. If the Coyote represents Ford's modern blend of speed and stamina, the 351 Cleveland proves the blueprint was already there. An engine that could roar, endure, and refuse to die. If the 351 Cleveland was the wild child of Ford's small block family, the 351 Windsor was the steady sibling, the one you could always count on. Introduced in the late 60s, it wasn't chasing exotic design or headline-grabbing speeds. Instead, it focused on simplicity and durability. Early versions made around 250 horsepower, and in Mustang and F100 applications that meant 0 to 60 in about 7 to 8 seconds. Solid performance for its era, but not the stuff of legends. What was legendary was how it lasted. One owner remembered his father's Lincoln, powered by a Windsor that sailed past 200,000 miles without drama. When the car was finally sold, the buyer only wanted one thing: the engine itself, ready to be rebuilt for a truck. That says everything about the Windsor's reputation, not flashy, but dependable enough to outlive the vehicles it powered. That's why the 351 Windsor became Ford's go-to workhorse for decades. Its simple pushrod design, strong internals, and easy rebuildability made it a favorite for mechanics and enthusiasts alike. For everyday families, it meant years of reliable service. For hot rodders, it was a blank canvas. With aftermarket support so deep, you could turn it into almost anything: a reliable cruiser, a drag strip warrior, or a work truck mule. Unlike the Cleveland, which thrived on high RPM performance, the Windsor excelled in versatility and longevity. It proved that not every legend had to be wild. Some earned their place by showing up, mile after mile, generation after generation. If the Cleveland roared, the Windsor endured. And in Ford's long history of bulletproof engines, endurance is what ultimately turns metal into legend. If the 351 Windsor was the steady heartbeat of Ford's small block lineup, the 460 big block was pure brute force. Launched in the late 60s, this monster was never subtle, with outputs ranging from 250 to over 300 horsepower and a tidal wave of torque. It wasn't built for quarter-mile glory, it was built to move mountains. In heavy pickups and RVs, it could still push 0 to 60 in about 8 to 9 seconds, which was impressive for the sheer weight it carried. But owners didn't talk about its sprint. They talked about its stamina. Farmers, RV enthusiasts, and contractors all shared the same story. The 460 simply refused to quit. One owner proudly called it bulletproof, right there with the 300 inline 6. Another joked, "You don't pass gas stations with a 460, you bring the station with you." Yes, it drank fuel like few others, but it gave back something priceless: unstoppable pulling power and reliability. That's why the 460 Big Block still holds a special place in Ford history. For the people who needed to tow horse trailers across states, haul construction loads day after day, or push massive RVs through mountain passes, the 460 was a trusted partner. Its naturally aspirated, straightforward design meant fewer failure points. No turbos, no fragile tech, just cast-iron muscle. Maintenance was simple, parts were plentiful, and the engine's tolerance for abuse was legendary. It didn't just power trucks, it powered confidence. In an age when fuel efficiency mattered less than dependability, the 460 stood tall as the workhorse for heavy-duty America. If the Windsor represented balance, the 460 embodied excess done right. Big displacement, big torque, and a big reputation for never letting its owners down. If the 460 Big Block was excess done right, huge cubes, huge torque, and huge fuel bills, the 2.7L EcoBoost was proof that Ford could flip the script in the modern era. Small, twin-turbocharged, and fuel-efficient, it looked nothing like the iron giants of the past. Yet when drivers got behind the wheel, they realized this wasn't a fragile experiment, it was a revelation. With 325 horsepower and a broad wave of torque, an F-150 equipped with a 2.7 could sprint to 60 in about 6 seconds flat, numbers that would have shocked muscle car fans a generation earlier. But here's where the story takes a turn. Despite its speed, the 2.7 wasn't just quick, it was tough. A Ford technician with nearly 40 years of experience admitted he'd never seen one fail catastrophically. Owners echoed the same: most reliable engine I've ever had. 120,000 miles, no problems. Absolutely bulletproof. In a family of EcoBoosts, sometimes criticized for complexity, the 2.7 became the quiet star. That's what makes the 2.7 EcoBoost so remarkable. It marries the thrill of modern performance with the trust of old-school durability. Step on the gas, and it delivers instant surge, making even a full-size truck feel light on its feet. Ease off, and it hums along smoothly, sipping fuel while racking up mile after mile. For skeptics who once swore that only big V8s could be bulletproof, the 2.7 proved otherwise. It showed that advanced engineering, when done right, could deliver both excitement and endurance. If the 460 Big Block represented an age of raw muscle, the 2.7 EcoBoost represents evolution. Leaner, smarter, and every bit as dependable. Together, they bookend Ford's legacy, proving that whether measured in liters or longevity, true legends are always bulletproof. From the unkillable 300 inline 6 to the modern 2.7 EcoBoost, one thing's clear: Ford knows how to build engines that just don't quit. These power plants proved that real legends aren't measured in 0 to 60 times, but in hundreds of thousands of miles. So tell me, what's your high-mileage hero? Drop it in the comments, smash that like button, and subscribe for more real-world automotive stories. Until next time, drive safe and keep those engines bulletproof.